Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. This is your boy CIZZY Live Action back at it again with another episode of the College Stetson Show. Look, I tell you guys all the time, every week, I'm coming back with a fire guest. Although we have switched things up this time, so when you listen to this will be a part of my first podcast pack, or y'all can call it a podcast mixtape, whatever you want to call it, dropping October 1st. And we're just bringing amazing guests onto the show to have conversations about them, highlight their stories, highlight their businesses, highlight their journeys, and, with the intention of bringing some hope to the community of women, the community of Black and brown people who just need somebody to look up to feel like they can do something outside of the box. So we're about to jump in with our guest today. Go ahead and introduce yourself to the people.
Hello, everyone. I'm Gabriella Salinas, the owner of 624 Photos, and that is a portrait photography business that I run.
I love it. I love it. Well, thank you for coming on the show today. I'm excited. I'm excited because unfortunately, but not intentionally, and we're intentionally trying to bring more women guests on the show, but you're only like one of like 5 or one of 10 out of like 100. So we're trying to run those numbers up. So we're really honored to have you on the show. Thank you for dropping in. But let's start at the beginning. I always like to ask my guests, where were they born? Where did they grow up? What was that like for you? So where'd you grow up? What city were you born in? And just talk about, a little bit about your childhood experience before we jump into business.
So I'm from Kansas City, Missouri. I grew up in Lee Summit, Missouri, and so that is the suburbs. And we had a whirlwind of upbringing. Well, I had a whirlwind. So my parents moved out to the suburbs when I was about 9 months old, and so that's all I knew. We grew up in a lake community, and so I'm a water kid. I am very chill, outdoorsy person. I have 2 older siblings, so they always kept me on my toes. And because I'm Black and Mexican, I still have my roots. A lot of my family is in the city, but then a lot of my Mexican side is still in Mexico. So growing up, I had a lot of culture around me. I had a lot of different types of experience from the people that lived around me. And so it was always something every day. We also were a big soccer family. So we had,
Let's go.
yeah, we had games every weekend. We were always on the run. But the biggest thing that I loved about growing up is that my dad was the filmer of the family. So I've watched myself grow up through home videos, pictures,
I love it.
and that kind of intrigued my interest into the art world. Both of my parents are pretty artistic, although that's not their occupations. But art and expression was really big in our household, and so I think that shaped me into who I am today. So yeah, growing up in Kansas City was amazing. I was always downtown. They made sure I knew my highways, so I was never lost. But yeah, it was great.
I love it. I love it. And you touched on your Mexican and Black upbringing and like the intersection of cultures there. What was that experience like? Were you able to ever go back to Mexico to visit family? Like, did people ever come into town? Do you speak Spanish? Just talk a little bit more about like what that was like growing up. Did you ever have like a sense of, I know for me personally, may not be the reality for everyone else, but sometimes feeling a little bit lost about my culture or who I belong to or who accepts me at school and things like that. So just talk about your experience there. Do you feel like your school friends were super accepting of your like the mix of culture? Did you ever have any confusion there? Or, what has been some positives, some negatives of that experience?
Yeah, so it was a lot of it. I think for me, growing up, I don't think my race was something I ever really thought about. So I was kind of friends with everybody until I got to high school. So that changed, but I'll get to that in a second. Growing up, though, I definitely did not speak Spanish all the time. So people would be like, "Can you say this in Spanish? Can you say that?" I'm like, "I don't know how to say that." And so that for me was a sense of shame almost when I was in school. When I was at home, it was different. My dad is very out there. He's just like, yeah, we're Mexican, be Mexican and proud. So I knew that at home, but it kind of was a different story when I got to school. And so when I was at my abuela's house, we're always speaking Spanish. We're always speaking Spanish around me. And so I know it. I know how to say it well, speak it well. We did have a lot of family members come through. My family was huge on both sides. And so the beautiful
Amazing.
thing, yeah, the beautiful thing and the weird thing on the Mexican side, all of us cousins are Mexican and black. So we
Mm,
never, like, I don't know, the cultures were so intertwined for us that it was always like, what's up, man? What's up? Like, you on your side? You know, it was never weird or anything. We are all just mixed breeds, and so everybody just has great personalities and upbringings. And I think for all of us, whether my mom is black, but some of my cousins, their dad is black. We always just valued both cultures, both sides, and it was never nothing that was like this side is better than that side. We all had a very similar foundation that family is most important, and that we wouldn't want to be anything else. So it was actually really cool to
that's
have that
beautiful.
experience with all of my cousins and my siblings. And so, yeah, so on my mom's side, black side, everybody's a little older, so that was more fun. I was like one of the only younger kids, and so from that, I learned how to be patient and how to appreciate my family members and
Mm,
others. And so for me, that was really important growing up because I used that on both sides. So yeah, that was that.
I love that. I love that. And, you touched on something that I think is super important. I grew up in a family and in a faith that really pushed, like, not like it was mandatory as a law, but really praised interracial relationships because of the barriers that they break down
Mm-hmm.
between cultures, between races. And when we can have, not saying only be interracial. And I know this could cause an uproar in certain communities, but just like the beauty of that is you can break down so much, racial tension. You can break down so much discrimination. You can bring so much love between two different cultures, families, and communities who may not have been, raised in such an accepting environment. So being able to, if you fall in love with somebody of a different race, not telling you like, no, you only have to, but if you happen to fall in love with somebody of a different race, like that's really a beautiful thing. And being able to start a family that, you know, can kind of like break those curses, break those, negative opinions on
Mm-hmm.
the black community or the Mexican community or these people only do this, these people only do that, or allowing like the social constructs of like colonialism and all that, who has brainwashed our different countries and continents to think that all of these people are taking our jobs and all of these people are gangbangers or whatever it is. You know what I'm saying? You can break all that down by just love and family. So I think it's really beautiful. All families are beautiful, but I definitely have a special place in my heart for like families who are mixed, and
Yeah.
it's beautiful. Awesome. Anyways, so you did, and then we'll move from this part of the conversation, but you did just say that it kind of changed a little bit in high school in
Mm-hmm.
terms of race being not a big issue, not something you really paid attention to, but once you entered high school, things or maybe an experience happened. Talk about that.
Yeah, so I'm glad you brought that back up. So as I got older, things changed and life changed for me. And so when I got into high school, that obviously was a bigger pool of people. And so I got closer with my black friends, but then I had this like reckoning with myself, and I was like, wait, something's off. Like I'm missing something about myself. And I realized that I didn't have enough Hispanic friends in school. And so that was really hard for me because my family was like, oh my gosh, you're like so black power. You're so like anti this, anti that. And I'm just like, yeah, like I'm appreciating my culture. But a part of me deep down was like, I'm missing like my Mexican side. I want to learn more about that history. And so for me, college or high school was really a turning point for me. And I knew that, photos was going to be the way that I connect with a bigger audience. And so that's kind of where my 64 photos came in and starting to bud. And I started to like really break down who I wanted to take photos of and who I wanted to surround myself with. And as college got closer, I was like, okay, this is the time that I'm going to reinvent myself and just get a more even amount of friends, because being in the suburbs is just so isolating sometimes, and people don't get it. A lot of my friends were mixed, and I think a lot of people think that being mixed is only black and white. And so for me, being a double minority, I'm like, okay, this is a little different. This is
Mm-hmm.
a different beast, and it's a different struggle for me because I'm seeing all these police brutality cases, but I'm also learning about ICE and learning about all these kids that are getting detained. the border, and I'm like, okay, this is a lot. Like nobody likes me. Nobody likes my pictures, and I'm sitting here like I think they're beautiful. And so high school is really, really a hard time for me. But I got my grounding. I got a lot on my family. So yeah, when I got to college, I was like, okay, it's go time. So yeah, high school was a time.
It was a time, man. But like you said, it really brought a lot of things to light and made you kind of focus on the act of being self-aware and like being explorative and curious about things that you were passionate about or starting to become passionate about. So how did that manifest itself once you got to MU? You are a MU alumni, I believe. Correct me if I'm wrong, but once you arrived there and again, more diversity, more experience with more kids, more students, more education, like talk about how that high school experience and then the beginning of your interest in photography all started to manifest once you got to MU.
Yeah, so I'm not, I would say, a confident person, but when I know what I'm doing, I think that's when my confidence exudes. So when I first entered college, I actually was there the summer before in a transition program. So it was all minority students, and it was like about 30 of us. So I had my footing with those people. And so the whole summer, I was going back and forth to Kansas City doing this videography internship with a guy who does quinceañeras and weddings. And so I knew from that moment, I was like, okay, photography is going to be my lane, but it's not going to be my only lane. And so what I did was I planned my classes strategically. I involved myself in a lot of cultural classes, like women and gender studies, Black politics. Again, Missouri, they don't have a lot of Hispanic history or anything like that in classes. So I kind of had to join organizations that would get me there. And so I threw myself in because in high school I felt like I was missing out on organizations and stuff because I was a music kid. I was always in my violin and doing stuff like that. And so when I got to college, I was like, okay, I'm going to join orgs. I'm going to meet people. I'm just going to get myself out there. So the first month of college in the fall semester, I was asking the Greeks, I'm like, hey, can I take pictures at your party? They're like, yeah, go ahead. So first couple months, people are like, oh, that's Camera Girl. I'm like, no, Camera Girl has a name, but we're going to get there eventually. And so
That part.
yeah, so I was just taking pictures here, there, everywhere. I got an internship with an office, and so I was taking pictures of professional things. So faculty was seeing me. My name was ringing in doors that I never even knew about. And so I just involved myself so much. I was nice to everybody. I connected with everybody. I didn't close myself off to anyone because I was like, you never know who's watching you. You never know who's going to be that next connection. And so by the time I graduated, I was so proud of myself because I had, a diverse group of friends. I had a lot of experience under my belt. And everybody supported me so much. Through the 4 years, my class I came in with, they supported me through photography, through my Zoo Soul, which was a music organization I was president of. They knew what I was good at, and so they put me in those corners. They asked me to be on panels for things. They recommended me, and so I have to say that I had a one of a kind community, and it wasn't even just my class. It was the older people, it was the younger people. They're finding out who I was, and even the faculty and the staff, some of them knew who I was. And so Mizzou really was a beautiful spot for me to grow and strengthen my skill set and just get in there and just mess up and succeed and then mess up again.
I love it. I love it. I love it. I think that, that time after high school is really an interesting time because you start to learn a lot, become more mature, you start to become more intellectually aware when you're 16, 17, 18, but you're still maturing. And obviously we mature till the day we die. I would disagree with anybody who says that somebody's just fully mature. That's cat. But we're starting to learn a little bit more. We're starting to get curious about things and become passionate about things. Then we get into college. Organizations become a thing. You meet kids from across the country who are passionate about similar things or maybe who are starting organizations or companies that focus on solving a certain problem. And so you get involved in all that. And then you graduate college or don't. And then you start, getting active in the streets and trying to figure out what you want to do. So, life is such an interesting thing. It's really a lot about chapters, and with the topic of chapters in mind, thus far, I know you're still young, I know we're still young, but like, what has been your favorite chapter thus far in your life, and why would you give that answer? So it could be your childhood, like, 5 to 10, it could be 10 to 15, but in general, what has been your favorite chapter, or what's a chapter that you've enjoyed the most thus far?
Yeah, I honestly have to say my college years. So from like 18 to 21. I think that that was a time for me where I was away from home for the first time. I mean, I wasn't that far, but I was home, or I was away from home.
You was far enough.
Right, I was far enough. So I'm like sitting back and realizing a lot of the things that one I've been through, that I never got the chance to process because I was in it. And then two, I was meeting people who made me realize how I was raised and made me proud of that. And so I really got the time to reflect, and I got the time to understand who I am and understand why I am the way I am. And so that time for me during college was literally just mistake after mistake, after crying, after laughing. And I involved myself with people that I never would have thought that I would. And I'm like, now you're my best friend. And now we're like sisters for life. And I'm never going to let go of you. But also, I grew so much with my faith with God. I had to go through a lot of things. Yes, I had to go through a lot of things. I came out as bisexual for the first time. I had to go through like a spiritual reckoning. Like, it was so much in college that I'm so appreciative of. And now when I look back, now that I'm graduated, now I know why I had to go through those things. I know why my family is the way that it is. I know why I appreciate Kansas City so much. Because when I first got there, I'm like, there ain't nothing there. And then I went away and I was like, wait, we have a lot actually. There's culture, there's kindness, there's support, there's a community in Kansas City that I truly haven't seen anywhere else yet. I have friends from St. Louis, Chicago, Seattle, like everywhere. And every time I visit, I'm like, there's something there that they just don't have that we do. And so for me, yeah, college years, that was just so much growth for me. It was so ugly and beautiful, and I'm appreciative of every second.
I love it. I love it. I think, I think tests and difficulties are so like much to deal with, but they're the only reason that we become the greater versions of ourselves. They're the only reason we're able to achieve such great levels of success as, and will, for us two being young,
Mm-hmm.
but for the people we know who are 50, 60, 70, the only reason they've gotten to where they are, the only reason they've gotten the knowledge, the wisdom, the success, the children, the grandchildren, all of that is all through tests and difficulties, challenges, pain, and overcoming it and learning from those experiences and then just moving forward. It's such a cliche thing to say, it's, fall forward, not, don't fall on your back so you can still look up, all the little sayings, but they're cliche for a reason. Things become cliche because they're valid. And so they're said a lot. Something that's said a lot and repeated a lot often has a lot of power and value to it. So, I love that you were sharing some of the tests and difficulties you went through college and why that was some of your favorite chapter. And oftentimes people be like, "Why wasn't your favorite chapter so much struggle?" But that's exactly the reason. You know what I'm saying? So I love that. I love that so much. And so on the topic of failure or trying shit and trying again, like let's jump into your career in photography, like your first few clients, your first few shoots, like. What was that like for you? What were some initial fears you had when you had maybe your first paid gig or you were working for someone that you looked up to, whatever it might be? But kind of talk about your initial fears and maybe how you overcame them. And then I'll hit you with some more follow-up questions. But let's start there.
Yeah, so my first client was in high school. I do not
Oh, hell yeah.
recommend
All
a
right.
high
Run it back.
schooler. Yeah, I do not recommend a high schooler to start a business. I was all over the place and I barely knew my camera. So like the first year, and I'll be honest, I didn't like really dive into my camera and understand it for a long time. I still don't know every single button. But for a while, I was messing with my settings. So I was just taking forever. I was just like, oh, I'm sorry. Let me fix my exposure. Let me fix my shutter. And then every time I take a picture, I'm like, this is not what I wanted. And so for a long time, I was just fumbling with the settings of my camera. And so it was so much anxiety. I was like, okay, I had this client in front of me. Because at first I was charging like $40, $60. Like it was enough, but it wasn't like crazy. And so I gave him hundreds of pictures. I'm editing hundreds of pictures. And I'm in the cold. I mean, I remember one shoot, it literally had to be like 20 degrees, and my clients were like, "We still want to do it." I was like, "I can't feel my fingers, girlies. I can't feel what I'm doing." I was like,
Y'all can't be mad at me if I take the wrong photo because I couldn't feel myself touching the button in the first place.
right. So I was just literally just throwing myself into every situation. I met a lot of people in the city somehow because word of mouth, and I was taking people's senior pictures. And so, yeah, for me running a business, there were some times I didn't even take the pictures right. I didn't send them to the client. I mean, I was messing up. I was just, luckily I have a good personality. So luckily I have a good personality. But in my head, I'm like, oh my gosh, I'm making myself look good.
Right.
So yeah, that was like when I first started. And then when I worked with the guy over the summer going into college, that was amazing for me. I've had amazing mentors all throughout this time somehow. God has put them in my life, and I'm so grateful. But I think doing that videography gig really showed me what hard work looks like, because we're at these weddings for like hours. I mean, we're getting there like 9 a.m., not leaving till 11 p.m. It's full day, full content, nonstop. And so I was like,
Real life.
okay, yeah. I was like, if I could do this, I could do anything. Like, I'm running around, breaking down equipment, putting up equipment, doing 2 camera angles. I mean, I'm in it. And so for me, that gave me a sense of pride. One, because I'm working for my people. I'm working for my fellow working people, and that made me really appreciate the love that we have for each other in the culture. So that helped. And then 2, it just helped me with my hustle. My dad and my mom, they're both hustlers. They've always worked for what they wanted, always told us that education is power. And so for me, that moment of time was like, okay, I have it in me. Because sometimes, you're like, am I lazy? Did they rub off on me enough? But that summer, I was like, no, I got it. Like, I am my parents' kid, and I have what it takes to be the best that I can be.
Yeah, sometimes you just got to be put in a situation or be given an opportunity to, express that hustle. I think oftentimes people struggle to find that opportunity or that space to do it. And so you're never able to see somebody's grit because they were never in a situation where they were forced to express it.
Right.
So it's just kind of being intentional about putting yourself in uncomfortable situations where you're going to have to hustle. And then you're going to know, because either you're going to quit or you're going to keep going. But you have to intentionally put yourself in those situations. And by intentionally, I mean, put yourself in situations that you want to be in, that they're going to help you grow. Don't just go fucking, well, to prove that I can hustle, I'm going to go work for FedEx. Meanwhile, you trying to be a professional photographer. It's like, that don't really make sense. You know what I'm saying? So anyways, I could go on a rant there too, but, we're going to jump into the next question. So I want to ask you, what would you do if you were, 14, 15, 16 again, whenever you picked up a camera? Like, if you had to start over from scratch again in the photography business, what are some things that you would change up now that you have a little bit more experience in the game and you know what would have been helpful or what wouldn't have been helpful? Like, what are a few things you'd change up in terms of developing your skill set, in terms of how you do business, how you would price things, just in general, whatever you want to share?
Yeah. One of the biggest things that I would say is looking up more professional photographers to look at. For me, a lot of my inspiration came from myself and from like Pinterest. And what I realized as I got older was people like can name photographers off their head, and I still can't. Like I still never got too deep into like some famous photographers, but that is where I would start, because that is what's going to teach you the technical skills, and that's what's going to teach you, the outcome that you want to get, that clean, crisp, just timeless photo. And so I would say to myself, just look up more professional photographers to hone in that timeless aspect, because I think the era that I grew up in was Instagram. So I was following like so many Atlanta photographers, and granted, they were great at the time. Like, they're still great. I've watched them grow. They don't know who I am, but I've watched them grow. And that kind of shaped my look for a certain time, but it also created a deep insecurity in me because I was always just doing this rat race of like, am I good enough? Am I good enough? Am I good enough? And I was never just looking at my work for what it is. And I was just comparing all the time. So I would say, one, look up more professional photographers and less of social media, because that prevents you from creating art that you actually want to create. Another thing is I would have leaned on my mother a little bit more for like money management, because I mean, when you're 14, 15, 16, getting clients, getting money in there, you have to learn how to save your money to get better equipment. And so that was something I wasn't good at. I'm like, okay, I'm about to just spend it on Adobe Suite and whatever else I want. Like, no, you have to put it back in your business. And so that's one thing that I would definitely make sure that I do different. Um,
I love I love that. I want to touch on something you said right before that though. How does one overcome that comparison anxiety, or that cycle of comparison, especially as a creative? I find myself doing it myself. I've been doing this podcast for like 4.5 years, and then I go look at other people who've done theirs for a year, and they shit look amazing. The camera quality dope, the cuts, the edits are fire. They're getting signed by Revolt and Diddy. I'm like, yo, hold up, cuz. But for yourself, how have you? Obviously, there's no absolutely getting rid of it. I don't believe that that's possible. But how do you kind of manage that and make sure that you're not doing too much comparison or getting in your own way?
yeah, the first thing is just appreciating my work. Knowing that what I'm creating is purposeful. And at the end of the day, if it checks off my boxes, it's good. And then two, leaning into the community that I have. A lot of people are like, no, Gabby, your work is amazing. And I'm like, are you sure though? They're like, yeah. And then I just stop myself. I'm like, okay, if you say it's good, it's good. And I have to train myself to believe you, because obviously we're our own biggest critic. I mean, that's the thing that keeps us going and keeps us up at night. It's like, how can I do better? And then three is just getting better. Like there was a moment where I had to say, okay, if I want to look at their work and say, okay, my work is comparable to yours, get better. Like you have to spend the time in YouTube. You have to spend the time off of social media. You have to get in nature. You have to get in the world. Understand what makes people tick right now. Understand what makes you tick. That was something that I really took the time this summer and last summer, because I have senior seasons. Well, I had senior seasons. It was just nonstop work. And so on that time off, I took the time to get off of my camera, get out of Adobe, get out of all the things, and just get back into myself, get back into the world. But then when I'm on it, I'm like, okay, I'm looking up videos, I'm looking up TikToks, I'm looking up how these people are doing it. Is there an algorithm? Is there a formula that you're using? Because in order to be the best, you got to beat the best. And so you have to keep yourself going. You have to feed into yourself. And so I started working with more photographers, and not thinking of people as competition. There's enough money to go around. There's enough clients to go around. There's enough everything to go around in this world that you don't really need to be in competition. But instead saying, hey, here's a hand. Here is my contact information. If you want to link up with me. I think building a community to support you, to prevent that comparison, is really important, because instead of picking your own work apart, you're like, okay, what are you doing? How did you get that? I really admire that about your work. And then sometimes I'll implement it into my work. And then even those small details, you're like, okay, I like it a little better because it's transforming. And being okay, that's the biggest thing. Being okay with transforming your look. I feel like some people are like, what is my look? Or what is my specialty? And they stick to it, and then they get burnt out and they don't pivot. You have to pivot. Like you have to go to the next level. You have to know when you're ready to hit that next tier of yourself, and then do the work to get there. So, yeah.
I love that. I love that. Dropping bombs. Run that back. Run 7 minutes back, ladies and gentlemen. Replay it. Write it down. Write your notes. Take action. You already know the vibes around here. So I want to take this moment to say shout out to everyone listening right now, because without you guys, I am still everything, but I'm nothing. You know what I'm saying? Look, I'm still the shit, but I'm nothing. So make sure you guys keep listening. Share with a friend if you're enjoying this conversation. We only interview quality guests over here who are killing it in their space, who are obviously humble and loving, like we got in front of us right now. So I'm sure when you guys listen to these episodes, you guys can feel the good energy from the guests we bring on. And the amazing thing is, whether it's through a referral or through somebody I just come across on LinkedIn or social media, it's been awesome being able to converse and have conversations with all the dope individuals listeners have been able to listen to. And today with Gabriella, having this amazing conversation. So quick shout out to listeners, quick shout out to our guests right now, and back to regular programming, as they say, right? So let's talk about, sorry, brain farted. Let's talk about your run-ins with criticism or lack of belief from whether it's family members or whether it's professors from school or teachers, whatever, whoever maybe hasn't believed in your dream or questioned why would you study this or why would you go into photography or journalism. Like, let's talk about that and how you've been able to push through that and continue moving forward.
Yeah, so my biggest thing that I had to understand was my why in life, even if it changes every now and then, but understanding why I do this. So why I do photography is to show off underrepresented people in a normal ass way. Like, I think being in the journalism school, we obviously had to dissect advertisements and media. And so as the semesters went on, I'm like, okay, one, I've never seen myself really in media. And two, I've seen myself in media, but I'm not seeing other people in media. Why am I not seeing, my mom she's darker than me, but I'm like, why am I not seeing enough representation of darker skinned people? Why am I not seeing enough Asian people on media in a positive way? And so the goal of 624 Photos is just to highlight everyday people doing everyday things, but in a beautiful way, so people can start breaking off those stereotypes from us. And so that was my why. That's been my why. I finally understood it. And so that is what made everything in my life make sense. So every time somebody was like, well, because my mom, I love her. She's like, you need a lot more diversity on your page. And I'm like, yeah, but if you look at it, there's a lot of people catering to the majority. Like, I don't need that on my page. My page is going to be representative of who I see around me and who I am. So I kind of take it with a grain of salt. I'll put in a couple people in there. But at the end of the day, when you look at my page, I want you to see beautiful brown skin, black skin people. I want you to see what I see, what I want to see in my life, what I was missing growing up. I want you to see that front and center. And then two, my family's so good at breaking down my work. They're like, you could have did this better. You could have did that better. You could have highlighted them in this way. Your faces are starting to look the same. Your poses are starting to look the same. And so I'm really bad at feedback sometimes, but I take it, I get mad. And then when I'm not mad anymore, I'm like, okay, let me rearrange some things. Let me get some more inspiration. Let me look at some older movies again. Let me just redo how I do it. And so taking feedback with grace is the biggest thing. I think that's the biggest thing that I'm still working on, because like I said, when I hear feedback, it automatically feels like a dig at myself, but they love me, right? It's to better you. And so taking it with grace is really important.
I love it. I love that. Note, ladies and gentlemen, take feedback with grace. Write it down, post it on your wall. Look, all my guests do is drop gems. I love it. I love it. So I want to ask you, in the last 5 years, what new belief or behavior or maybe a habit has most improved your life? So we're thinking back to, 18, 19, 20, like what's a new habit, a new behavior, belief that you kind of acquired or learned that's really helped you out in your day-to-day living?
I would say the biggest thing is taking breaks. I'm really, really good at just going until I'm burnt out. And taking breaks for me is something that has completely changed how I look at life, how I appreciate people, and how I function in life. That, and then also yoga and meditation. To really be honest, it's something that it was never put in the forefront for me. My mom is really big on health, but I think more so food wise. But when it comes to mental health, like doing the mindfulness practices, doing yoga, taking that time in the morning to just be with yourself, that has definitely in the last, since I think COVID, has definitely changed also how I move in the world and how I communicate with people, giving other people grace, you know, understanding that people are people. I saw this one quote that is like, people are trees. You don't look at trees and you're like, why do you look like that? You're just like, okay, you're a different type of tree. And looking at people like trees, like, okay, you're not all the way how I am, but you're still beautiful. And I still understand that you have roots. And I still understand that you have different leaves that you have to grow and different seasons that you're in. And looking at people like that and being mindful of it, that has definitely changed even how I communicate with my clients. Instead of being like, okay, let's hop into it. Be like, how are you? How's your day? Do you have siblings? What do you do? What's your major? What is something you went through this semester that was really hard for you? How do you feel about graduating? So yeah, that has definitely.
I love it. I love it. And so, recently I believe you took up a role with Up Down. Is that correct?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Awesome. So yeah, the awesome thing about Up Down is we've had both Joshua, we've had Abram on the show, and now we have the amazing Gabriella. So I'd love for you to talk about the role that you're playing at Up Down, how the culture of that, organization has been while you're working there, and how much you've enjoyed it, and interacting with other entrepreneurs and creatives of color, and just, share a little bit about your experience there and what your role is, and boom.
Yeah. So I have known Josh for a couple years. I've taken his pictures previously. He's cool with my older sister is cool with everybody, so that means I'm cool with everybody. So he's just been waiting for me to graduate and get back to KC. He's like, I want you to work with us. You need to come to Up Down, and you need to grace us with your skills. So automatically off the bat, it was very welcoming, very encouraging. And so what I do is I do content creation. So I'm in there taking pictures of the events, helping out with marketing and branding and stuff. And so for me, it's right up my alley. I had a lot of no shows, no callbacks from applications that I've been sending in to different places since February. And so something told me, like, something is going to come for you. Something that is meant for you will be for you. And so this is what it is for me right now. So I'm able to just be myself. I'm able to show my take on photography. I'm able to try things. I'm able to fail and make mistakes. And it's not something that's looked down upon. It's like, okay, you learn from this. What are you going to do better the next time? What are you going to change up the next time? And so it's a big group of support from every single person in the organization. And so being able to have people that get it is amazing. And it makes me feel like I can actually grow and I can actually test things and say, no, that wasn't really it. Let's try something else. So, yeah.
That's beautiful. I love it. I love it. So I have two final questions for you. And this question is probably a really easy question for you to answer. And honestly, a pretty standard, sorry guys, I'm not being the best podcast interviewer ever, but a standard interview question most photographers get asked, but I do want to know. So, one person right now in the entire world, like that, if they hit you up and they're like, hey, I want you to be my full-time photographer for the next 90 days, like, and you get to choose who it is, who would it be?
I think it would be, and I'm looking up her last name right now because I want to make sure that I don't get it wrong. But Raven. I think it's Raven. Yeah. Raven B. Verona. She is the photographer that did Beyonce's Homecoming. She did Adele recently. Without a doubt, her. I think I would fall to the ground.
I love that. I love that. I think it's a good question to ask. Although it is standard, I think it allows our guests to kind of envision who do they admire? Who are they grateful for the work that they put out there in the world, and who can they aspire to work with? You know, always gives a little extra motivation, a little fire. So I feel like it's always a good question, regardless if it gets asked a lot. So final question of the day, Gabriella. And before I ask it, I want to say thank you so much for making time today for this conversation. You didn't have to make time. I'm sure you could be out there making money. You could be out there resting. You could be out there kicking it with the family. You could be out there, shoot, whatever, eating some good food. Shoot, you could be doing a lot of things. You know what I'm saying? But you chose to be here with me today, and I really do appreciate that, and I'm grateful. So thank you for your time.
Yes.
So the final question today is, it's your 111th birthday, and it's your last birthday on Earth, okay? You've lived the life you want to live. You've had a lot of fun. You've achieved everything you want to achieve, but it's your last day, and your great-great-grandkids are sitting at your feet, and they look up to you, and they like, great-great-grandma, give me one piece of advice on how to live a good life. What are you going to tell them?
Whew. I would tell them to be kind. Be kind and open up yourself to the world.
I love it. I love it. Ladies and gentlemen, make sure you guys follow Gabriella by going to, let them know, what's your website, what's your Instagram, how can they support you?
Yes, you can find me on Instagram at 624photos. My website is 624photos.com, and photos is Fotos. It's in Spanish. Find me there, enjoy my work, give me feedback, and I hope to see you soon.
I love it. I love it. Gabriella, thank you so much. Ladies and gentlemen, make sure you leave a 5-star review, share with a friend, as that is the only way we can grow. Thank you for listening to this episode of the mixtape, the podcast mixtape, the best ever, the College Stetzer Show. 5-star reviews, ladies and gentlemen. Holla at y'all later.